Hello everybody, welcome to the Football Daily Weekly. Good to have you with us. Laurence is here, hey. And Dave is here as well. We're going to be talking about the 5 things we learned from the weekend's action. First up, Barcelona. They're back to their best, gentlemen. They've 11 consecutive wins on the bounce, which is equalling the record that was set under Pep Guardiola. Messi is scoring more hat-tricks than he's had hot dinners. Dave, are Barcelona back to their best like they were under Pep Guardiola?
I wouldn't say they're back to their best like under Pep, but they're playing a bit of a different style. It's more like an actual 4-3-3 with their 3 forwards staying up top quite a lot. So if you're looking at pass combinations of the game, you've got Adriano going to Neymar as the bit highest pass combination, or Messi, Montoya going to Messi, so it's a different style. Xavi and Rakitic aren't dominating the games anymore. It's going from the centre-halves to the full-backs and then going forward.
Do you like that as much?
That's a good observation, that. I think, because obviously with Pep Guardiola's side, it was all about the midfield 3, which was often Busquets, Xavi and Iniesta.
It wasn't as far. Like it almost seems closer to what Arsenal were trying to play, even this season, than what Pep tried to play. And I've got to say, I don't find it scintillating. I find it a bit more formulaic, and I'm not sure I like that.
I think it's really broken. It's a bit of a broken team. I don't like it as well. I think Pep's team was that they recycled the ball a lot better. It was better to watch. And this team sort of, the game against Atletico in the Cup that they won, it was a very 7 players defended, 3 attacked, and that's how it worked out. And potentially with the Champions League coming up, if you're not a team and you're not defending as a unit, that could cost them.
Do you think it comes in cycles? So,
well, the new managers have different ideas, don't they? You're never going to get a carbon copy, and he'd probably be foolish to do so.
And I agree, but and because also it's very hard to replicate what Pep did, right? But think of it this way, maybe, is that it goes in cycles at Barcelona. We saw a few years ago a similar generation, the Marc Overmars-ish generation, when it was coming through, and it all looked...
Well, Overmars never came through there, but when he was playing...
No, that's what I mean. It's like that Marc Overmars generation when they brought those guys in.
It was under Van Gaal, I think.
I think so, yeah. And that's very different to the Barcelona style of football that Cruyff would want them to play. And so maybe they go through generations like this where it's like, look, we know we have to invest to keep ourselves up there, bring the next generation through. And it's almost like doing Galacticos in a slightly different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Like maybe as well, you can go back to the team of Deco and Ronaldinho, where they had these are great attackers, and they're going early to the attackers, and the attackers are creating stuff instead of the central midfielders running the show. So that's top point.
Yeah,
top point, Laurence. Tim Sherwood is the new manager of Aston Villa, and he's already making an impact, it would appear, gentlemen. It was 0-0 at half-time between Aston Villa and Leicester in their FA Cup match, Laurence, and Tim Sherwood went down there, gave him a few words of wisdom, bit of positivity, and they went out and won 2-1.
I have real doubts about Tim Sherwood as a manager, just because of what he did, the politics that he caused at Spurs. And you wonder if Andy Leonard's making a rub for his own back here. Because the respectful nature of all his previous managers was, I'll remain quiet, I don't need to talk too much, I'll just get on with my job, I've got some players here, I want to try and make them into a team that will win. Tim Sherwood's very much, it's all going good, it's all about Tim, as soon as it goes bad, ooh, who can I pick out and blame?
The Harry Redknapp school of thought, one might say.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah, Dave, we're starved with good young English managers in the Premier League, and do we have one in Tim Sherwood?
Potentially. Like the thing that with his Spurs team, there was goals, and what Villa are obviously struggling with this season is scoring goals. They've scored the least goals in Europe's top 5 leagues for any side. So I think he'll bring that. I think what the good thing about Sherwood was obviously the Adebayor thing, got him scoring goals, scored 11 goals under Sherwood's tenure. I think that was just behind Edin Dzeko and Sergio Aguero. But I think what I liked the most was Christian Eriksen, his role on the left-hand side, and how Christian Eriksen became a sort of player with a lot of potential at Ajax. Came to Tottenham and didn't really show that. Then Tim Sherwood, arguably, turned him into the goal-scoring midfielder that he is right now. And that could be good for the Villa side. They want to be more open, they want to be more fluid, and they just want to, they do want to score goals.
Are we therefore going to see more like Weimann becoming a bit more prominent again, and then sort of knocking up to Benteke and then overlapping? Or
I think it's going to be Benteke as your main man. This season he scored 2 goals and got 1 assist, which is absolutely rubbish for him. But Benteke scores his goals after January, so second half of the season. I think 20 of his 31 goals in the Premier League have come after January the 1st. So it's going to be the Adebayor effect on Benteke, and the likes of Scott Sinclair obviously scored the winner. You could really see him potentially playing that Eriksen role on the left-hand side and becoming what he should potentially be, a decent player for a decent Premier League side, like a mid-table side maybe.
Yeah,
there's a lot to expect from this Aston Villa side. It's a very different squad to Spurs though. I mean, it's worth saying that. And I mean, Eriksen also bags the potential more than Scott Sinclair. It's not put him down, but it's very different.
So just quickly, Laurence, do you think that, Tim Sherwood, people talk about his motivation and man management.
Yeah.
Is that enough just on that alone in the Premier League?
what he's done is he's set a very public goal, 6 wins, and then I think he thinks that'll keep them up. If he can motivate them to that, then that'll work.
The Milan clubs are still struggling, ladies and gentlemen. AC Milan and Internazionale, they're really rubbish this season, Dave, aren't they?
There's nothing that stands out really.
We're so used to seeing at least one of them being right up there and playing well in Europe. And
for a team with such history, it's kind of sad that they're both poor this season. Milan, there's nothing that stands out statistically for them. No one's stepping up. The likes of El Shaarawy or Honda, no one's really scoring any goals. They've scored 33 goals in the league, conceded 30. So they're not defending well and they're not scoring goals. So it's a bit. He started very well this season, but he scored quite a few penalties. So I think nearly half of his goals are from the spot.
They all count, Dave.
They do all count, but the output isn't really there from their attackers.
Yeah, it's a funny one, Laurence, because it would almost be the equivalent of, in a few years' time, the two Manchester clubs being fairly sort of, not quite mid-table, but languishing in 7th and 8th position.
There's very much reason behind this, and the reason is at AC, the money's just stopped because all of their backers, all the big people at least, have stopped giving them money, and it's essentially a stagnant club right now because of what's going on with Berlusconi and all the things around that. And then with Inter, it's a strange one because actually they do have quite a good squad and team.
I think they're starting to go the right way.
Yeah, and at least they're trying to turn things around. The acquisition of people like Shaqiri and moving in the right direction.
Do you think Mancini going back there?
I quite like that.
I think it's a good one, yeah. I think that he has, like you were saying, he's starting to blend these players together. Interesting, at the weekend, he left out Kovacic and Icardi, who have been arguably the 2 best players this season. But then they put in a performance on 1-4-1. Shaqiri creating 4 chances, 1 assist, 1 goal. Really top performance. But it's just interesting. He's come back. David Sanson, I think, will be a really good signing for them. I think they've been really struggling getting some decent fullbacks and decent defenders recently, and that's why Inter have struggled of late in the last few seasons, just conceding too many goals.
There's a lot of questions over how Serie A in general can rekindle what is quite a stagnant league at the moment, because obviously they're so far behind everyone else financially, commercially, all these things that you think, well, it's difficult for them to market themselves anywhere outside of the Champions League. So if neither of these sides make the Champions League this season, that's another season where they don't have that exposure, they don't have that money. They don't have the money in the Bundesliga, La Liga, Premier League, all these things coming through. And you think, well, they're going to have to look at the system and how they bring people through. Despite
the magic of the FA Cup, the big teams are still favourites for the trophy. Liverpool and Arsenal are still in there. At the time of recording, Manchester United are still in. We assume that they'll probably beat Preston, but you never know, Dave, in this day and age, in this FA Cup. But we think Liverpool and Arsenal definitely are among the favourites to win the competition.
I think Arsenal are the favourites right now, aren't they? They still stand further ahead of Liverpool in that sense. But Liverpool looked not actually that impressive against Crystal Palace, but they have moments where you think that's what Brendan Rodgers is trying to do.
But did you not think when they got ahead, they took the sting out of the game?
Yeah, completely. Yeah,
which is a good professional job to do.
Yeah, I agree, and also they coped quite well with a lot that maybe would have knocked this team off before. I mean, at one point Sacco went down with a head injury. It looked as Lovren was going to come on. Dwight Gale got through twice, only scored one of those, obviously. And there was. But I mean, he breached the back line and made the problem, which is what I'm saying. And apart from that, they didn't threaten all that much. But I mean, Liverpool didn't look at the very top of their form, but they still won the game. And they've got players in there, and equally Mario Balotelli, who played reasonably well in this game. When he came on, he looked good as part of the front 3, but it was actually a 2 with Sturridge and Balotelli up there. I thought it was quite impressive. And obviously they're still lacking Raheem Sterling in this game, Jordan Ibe. So tactically they're a bit more adaptable as well. Everyone's raving about Emre Can.
It's sort of like Liverpool coming back, aren't they? Really, they've started to put performances in. You'd say that they turned the game around from 1 goal down. Potentially at the start of the season they wouldn't have done that. And the confidence looks like it's coming back. Like Balotelli looks confident again after his winner last week. Players like Ricky Lambert look confident again. I think Brendan Rodgers deserves a lot of credit. Liverpool, the only unbeaten side in the Premier League in 2015. They've won 21 points out of 27 games since the Man United defeat. So they're really hitting form, and obviously Sturridge is coming back, which is absolutely massive for them.
I struggle slightly with what's going on at Liverpool because it's looking great for Brendan Rodgers. It's really impressive what he's done, but there are moments where you still think, well, can they make the top 4 for a start? If they don't make the top 4, does that really deflate the project? Because without that, then you wonder where the belief goes. It's the same deflation that maybe they felt with Suarez. You're right though, Brendan Rodgers deserves a huge amount of credit because time after time when there's been what is potentially a huge blow to the project, Suarez, a lot of defeats at the beginning of the season and draws and just them falling behind, he's managed to keep the players' heads up and turn things around. Everyone was doubting Lallana, everyone was doubting Emre Can, everyone was doubting whether Saka would be a good centre-back, and he's found systems which complement all these players. And there are other managers in the league with a real quality squad, such as Louis van Gaal, who's still not finding that.
Absolutely. In a quick word, Dave, do you think Liverpool can win the FA Cup?
I'd say potentially semi-final, day out to Wembley.
Yeah.
Every time they've gone past the fifth round, they've gone on to the final.
So you think final?
I think final.
Borussia Dortmund are on the march, ladies and gentlemen. They've had a terrible season so far. They've won back-to-back games for only the second time this season, but they're out of the relegation zone, Dave. And you think they might make the top four?
Potentially. You can see
potentially, yes.
The system's sort of coming together now. Aubameyang is stretching the defences, running behind, getting in behind, and that's what they've been lacking, which has opened up space for the likes of Royce Kagawa and Kevin Campbell, who's been pretty good since coming. You know, he's adapting quite well, got his first assist for Marco Reus's goal. So I think for Dortmund, I think it's starting to come together. Like, they've had a lot of injuries now, like the likes of Gundogan's coming back, completed 78 passes against Mainz, 28 more than any other player. Sahin's in there. It's starting to look a bit like the Borussia Dortmund of last season. The fluidity's coming, and I do think that they can push for definitely Europe.
Yeah, but Laurence, what do you make of all this Borussia Dortmund? It's incredible, really, the season that they're having. Do you think they will just about survive relegation, or do you think they'll go on confidently now?
I don't think they'll get relegated. They're too big to get relegated in a way, aren't they, Marcus? But I think maybe it's also it's showing what happens when you get big. Is that the competition within the league, you become the head that people want to take, etc., etc. They want to pile misery on top of you. I don't think Germans are like that, but I do think that in that league, the way that's happened to Dortmund, you've sort of seen that as a trend, and that's why they're falling down the table so much. They also had a system which people worked out, and they didn't do enough to change that. And you'd say they've not strung enough wins together because consistently they've played a couple of teams who maybe their system works against, and then they've come up against someone who can break that.
At the other end, Bayern looking more dominant than ever. Well, despite losing to Wolfsburg, of course, but 8-0 against Hamburg. They love a big score. The 9-2 they beat them a couple of years ago, I remember.
A 9-2, be a Hamburg fan.
What do you think about Guardiola at Bayern? Because people are actually slightly critical of him because he took over from Jupp Heynckes, was it, who won the treble. A bit of a tough act to follow. It is a tough act,
and I think he's completely changed the style, counter-attacking, beautiful on the break under Heynckes, and then now they've become that ball-playing side. I think Ian Robin has been absolutely brilliant since Pep took over. I think he scored more goals than any other Bayern player in Guardiola's reign, and obviously scored again at the weekend. Thomas Muller had his hand in 5 of the goals, which is absolutely outstanding. I think they're potentially after the Wolfsburg defeat, that's probably woken them up a bit. And now the Champions League's just coming back around. That probably happened at the right time.
Yeah.
I've been told they're going to give him more time to make this into the dominant Bayern team they want it to be. It's not as if they're not already dominant, but they're not being spoken about weirdly as sort of favourites for the Champions League and those sort of things. They've still got the likes of Barcelona, Real Madrid, who's been spoken of ahead of them.
They have to win the Champions League to be spoken in those kind of terms, really, don't they?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and they're a very impressive side. But I think I've been told in Germany they will give him more time to create even more of a system for Bayern Munich and try and bring more players through.
Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Do get your comments in below. Let us know what you thought of the weekend's action. Thanks to Dave and to Laurence, and we will see you next time.